Well, welcome back, everybody. We'll get this session started. I wanted to say a couple things. In addition to our Quote of the Day Twitter contest, we will have a Photo of the Day contest. I think you were seeing some of those earlier. And I think at the end of the conference, we're going to count how many times Karen and Claire are in pictures. But tweet us your favorite picture from the conference today using the hashtag NASCIO15. Our winner will be announced tomorrow morning, and their pictures will be retweeted, tweeted, and they will receive a prize. The contest runs all day, so please make sure you do that. Our general session is going to focus on the current landscape of the state information technology workforce and the recently released NASCIO publication, State IT Workforce Facing Reality with Innovation. Human resources and talent management rank among the top 10 CIO priorities for 2015. As you know, this is about a 4-year cycle. We did one a while back. It's a very important issue to, I think, all of us in state government in particular, not just in state government. There's a lot of things in that report that will resonate with the private sector as well in terms of the folks that we have in security and wrestling for those resources and trying to keep our workforce. And at the same time, develop our workforce, and at the same time as that is trying to make sure that they're all productive and engaged in the things that we're doing. So it is sort of a big thing for me, so it was sort of my idea to do it, and and I'll be darned. Here's the document, so if you get a chance to look at it, I'm sure you will, but that's what they're going to be talking about today, and I would be remiss to not thank a few people for really driving this through. We had Mark Bengal and Jim Smith, so Tennessee and Maine CIOs that really were the co-chairs for this. We had Jason Allison in Florida, Brenda Decker in Nebraska, Tana Lockhart in Colorado, Sherry Martin in Alabama, Suma Nalapati in Colorado, Kelly Sampson Rickert. I had a tough time with Sampson earlier. I got that one right. Sampson. Huh. In Maine, and Tim Robine and Karen Wilcox. And I would be also remiss if I didn't mention Leslie Scott, the Executive Director for the National Association of State Personnel Executives, and the time and effort that she put into this as well. And of course, I'm sure that all of you would agree that Meredith did an excellent job shepherding and moving this document through and getting to where we were. To get us thinking about this topic, we have an ARS question for our state members only. Is your state having any difficulty recruiting new employees to fill vacant IT positions? Yes or no? Grab your pads. You got 10 seconds to weigh in. Young Americans. Yes. Boy, I'm surprised that number's not actually higher, to be quite honest with you. I would have thought that, well, in Ohio, it's about 99%, I think, something like that. So let's move into our session. Please help me welcome to the stage discussion and facilitator Jim Smith, Chief Information Officer for the state of Maine. Our panelists, Tim Robine, Chief Information Officer for the state of Mississippi. It's on the end there. You can, wave.
Missouri.
Oh, did I? Oh, that's right. I said Mississippi. It's a show-me state.
You knew that.
I did know that. I know that. You know, it's like going up to the chalkboard, when you're a kid, you spell things differently. Think differently. We also have Carlos Ramos, the CIO for
Arizona.
California.
California. Sorry.
Is that new? I know. Are you taking over Arizona too?
We're consolidating. They don't have any water either.
And Leslie Scott. It's a good thing we all have a sense of humor. If we didn't have a sense of humor up here, we would all be crying. Leslie Scott, as I mentioned, Executive Director for the National Association of State Personnel Executives. Please give these guys a round of applause.
Thank you, Stu. It's my pleasure today to host this session, such an important session on IT workforce, and it ties in so well to the theme of our conference this mid-year. Are you ready? Because we've been talking about this for several years. We knew this would come, at least in my state, it's here now. Are you ready for this disruption? In my state, we have about 24% of our IT workforce eligible to retire in the next 2 years, and we talk about this internally. That's not a small change. That's transformational, so that's disruptive. And the idea is, how do you think about that? How do we approach that? And I thought it was great with the keynote presentation this morning, talking about not only the value of people and how you get the most from people, but the idea of leadership versus management, because I think we're going to need both of those as we approach this. And Stu mentioned the survey that we had the opportunity to work on in the last several months, and there are copies I know people will be able to pick up. Very important statistics. And you know, as we're all in this together as states, as we work together, we say, no, all the states are facing this issue. They're facing the baby boom or the silver tsunami, whatever we want to call it. People are leaving, people are going home. And for our state, that's thousands of years of experience will be walking out the door. So we have to somehow deal with that and deal with that now. A couple of key findings from the 2015 NASCIO Workforce Survey. Nearly 92% of states say salary rates and pay grade structures present a challenge to attracting and retaining IT talent. I don't think there's any surprise on that one. 86% of the states are having difficulty recruiting new employees to fill vacant IT positions, and I think we just saw that on the first question. 46% of the states report that it's taking 3 to 5 months to fill a senior level IT position, and that's something we think about a lot. If we have to replace 100, 200 people and each one's taking 4 to 6 months, you know, you do the math and you say you got a serious problem there. Other bullet, a shortage of qualified candidates for state IT positions is hindering 66% of states from achieving strategic IT initiatives. Very, very important statistic, right? We can't find the people that are moving us forward in this journey that we're on. And lastly, and no surprise here, security is the skill that presents the greatest challenge in attracting and retaining IT employees. We talked about that a little yesterday with the new CIOs are attending this year. Everyone is security. How do I find and keep security resources? So, before we turn to our guest panel for thoughts and ideas about this, we have a few more questions. So, if you could grab your device there. The first question, do your state's salary rates and pay grade structures present a challenge in attracting and retaining IT talent? This is for state members only. Yes or no? And apparently you have 8 seconds. Wow. No surprise there, right? 97%. 3% no, so congratulations to them. I have one more question. Yeah. And are you taking resumes? Okay. We have one more question, and these are all anonymous. Oh, no, wait. Apparently this question is just for Stu. I don't know why that is. but rather than that, why don't we all answer? We'll just ask Stu individually afterwards. How long is it currently taking to fill a senior level IT position? Less than 60 days? 60 to 90 days? 3 to 5 months, or over 6 months?
Good music, good soundtrack.
And apparently Stu said 3 to 5 months, so 50%. I think our experience in Maine has been over 6 months. We're a rural state, so sometimes we don't have the opportunity to get to all the resources we need to. So very, very critical issue. So let's turn to our panel now. We have a couple of CIOs with us, and Leslie is state procurement, correct? No, Leslie is state personnel executives. Correct, thank you. So we have a good vantage point here, or different perspectives up here. So let's frame the issue. Is this now a crisis? Is the silver tsunami here? The recent NASCIO survey indicates that on average, 20 or 30% of state resources may retire in the next 5 years, 21 to 30%, almost a third of your workforce. So for the CIOs, why don't we ask just a couple of questions to get started. What percentage in your states are eligible to retire? How long is it taking to fill these positions? And how is your competition with private industry impacting your ability to recruit? So maybe Tim would start for us?
Yeah, sure. So we have a third of our workforce able to retire in the next 5 years, but we don't consider it a crisis per se. It's something that we devote attention to. We've already retired 255 people over the last 5 years. And so we've got another 300 that are eligible to retire, which translates to probably a decline, if anything, in the people that are retiring. One important way that we've been able to make it so it's not a crisis is we've been able to downsize our workforce through consolidation and just becoming more optimized and more efficient. We've reorganized our staff so that we don't need as many people to do the same things we used to do. So it's a great tool in our toolbox to be able to deal with that. As far as how long it takes to fill a position, on a senior level position, unless we fill it internally, it's anywhere from 1 month to never, right? So if that's the route you're trying to go in Jefferson City, Missouri, that's the wrong route. So we really rely on mentoring, training, succession planning. We are building our own team of people that are going to come behind, and they are going to fill the shoes of the people that are leaving. There's a salary threshold that we can't get above that really prohibits us from competing with private industry to fill those senior level positions. The only time that it works in our favor is when industry is contracting instead of expanding. When private industry and the economy is growing, we can't compete. But on the flip side, we're not contracting when the economy goes down or a company closes its doors. And so there are opportunities when that happens, when there's layoffs or a company moves, there are opportunities to find some senior level positions, but you can't depend on that.
Thank you. Carlos, what about from California or slash Arizona?
Slash Arizona. Most of the issues are on the Arizona side, but I'll go ahead and share them. So for us, it's actually much worse than the average. We did a recent retirement risk survey of our own agency. We have just under 1,000 people there. And so what we did is we try to categorize how many people are eligible to retire today, how many of them are within 2 to 5 years, and then how many of them have more than that to work, 5 to 10 years that we could expect them to work. And we came up with a category because we have a lot of folks that are eligible to retire, but they don't have enough years in to really be vested. So they're kind of in the blue category or in an undesignated category because they're at risk. Many of them are coming to us after other careers, but we really just don't know. What we found was really kind of disconcerting. On average, we have 45% of our folks are either eligible to retire today or will be within the next 2 to 5 years. Wow. And if you factor in that other X category, it's 56%. Wow. Then when we looked at our executive levels, we were at 88%. So that's really scary. And then when you look at how long it takes us to fill, especially executive level positions, right. For us, we're in closer to that 6-month category, if ever. The other reason why it's particularly a crisis for us is, if you look at what's going on in technology, we're in a cycle of technology where we're moving to newer technologies. So it requires us to be responsive. In my state in particular, I think you're getting the business side of the house or the program side of the house starting to finally recognize that it has a heavy reliance on technology. So they're demanding more. They're wanting better responsiveness. They want more out of their technology systems and their technology workforce. And one of the things that they want more of is accountability. I don't know how many times in the last couple of weeks I've been in front of our legislature on issues of accountability. So they're turning to us. They're paying a lot more attention to us precisely at a time when the silver tsunami is hitting us. And then in California, the other thing that's happened is our economy is turning around, right. And our tech sector is really picking up. So I've personally on my staff lost, I'd say a good, I guess out of my executives, probably a good 15 to 30% of my staff that have retired and gone to work for the private sector. So it's a big issue for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult, obviously, to run an organization when you're turning over every 3 years. I mean, it's almost impossible. And, what you're describing between the need and the resources you're able to find is really, the other way people talk about the silver tsunami is the perfect storm. We need more resources, but there are fewer.
Sure.
So how do we deal with that? Leslie, how about your perspective, less obviously from the IT, but more in general, the holistic, just the state workforce in general and retirement stuff. Are you seeing this across multiple disciplines?
It's across state government in general. I do believe the average 5-year retirement eligibility right now is about 33%. So these numbers that you're talking are very in line. Yours obviously is a little bit higher with your agency, but so states are finding that it's really difficult. The silver tsunami is here. I remember back when I started with NASCIO in 1999, and our president at the time brought in this huge picture of the Titanic, and she said, this is what's going to hit us. And unfortunately, the recession and just a workforce that maybe had children later doing those types of things didn't retire as quickly as we thought, but now they are, and we're seeing it in droves. I know California and Montana have had huge retirements.
Thank you, Leslie. We now have another IRS question for the audience. Do you think a shortage of qualified candidates for state IT positions is hindering states' ability to achieve strategic IT initiatives? And this is for everyone. Yes, no, or unknown. I think on this one I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I mean, that's really telling, of course. And then, you know, sort of a little bit of what Carlos was saying. How do you get that message across to the legislators and other ones to say, well, no, really, this is going to impact when you want to move forward in mobile and cloud and other new technologies. This is going to severely impact our ability to move forward. So, interesting answers on that. So let's talk a little bit about. We talked about the gap. We talked about the issue here a little bit. Let's talk about things people are thinking about for solutions. So we'll go from that. From this morning, from the management to the leadership, how do we think about these things? Carlos, maybe we'll start with you on this one. You know, what solutions are you doing or planning for your state? How would you find the next generation of IT workers? And we have some, you know, just some ideas here. Things like branding. Are we able to brand state jobs and tell people the opportunities? Compensation, you know, and I'm not sure what we say about that. Training programs, mentoring programs. You mentioned before other ways to find resources like veterans, interns, business resources. Do you put a special emphasis on recruiting certain aspects like women or veterans? If so, how? Have you built partnerships with universities and private industry? And how are your recruiting practices evolving? Are you using social media or things like that? So, Carlos, do you want to start on that?
Sure. So we've developed essentially a three-part strategy, and I'll go over each of the parts individually. Before I do, I wanted to say one of the other areas where we're finding it a really difficult time of bringing qualified folks in addition to cybersecurity, that's a big one for us as well, is project management. You know, more and more, like as I was saying, departments and agencies are relying on technology, but you know, that's a whole project to take on one of those initiatives, and it's an area that we find ourselves continuously challenged in. So our strategy really revolves around three different approaches. One is to develop the staff that we have already in the workforce, the younger generations that are still, you know, 10 to 15 years from retirement, to try and shortcut their learning curve. The second part is to try and, in those areas where there's particularly critical functions, to try and centralize and leverage the expertise that we have in the state. One, so that you can build up, you know, a cadre of trained professionals, and then also leverage their experience to train folks. And the third one is trying to mature our processes, the way that we do technology, to guide, you know, let's say less experienced folks through the processes. So let me go through each of those individually.
Yeah.
In the way of staff development, what we've done is we placed a heavy emphasis on developing the IT workforce. So we've developed training courses and training academies in things such as leadership, specifically on project management. We partner with the tech sector a lot in California to put on educational forums in specific disciplines. So cybersecurity is a good example of that, or mobile technologies, or cloud computing. And the idea is to try and shortcut the learning curve. In our leadership academies, what we really try to teach folks is how to be a good leader, how to manage, how to make the levers of government work, how do you navigate the bureaucracy, and how to make good decisions. In the area of centralizing the expertise, we've developed a couple of centers of excellence. So within my organization, we developed a group of essentially state consultants. These are folks with particular expertise in different areas of program management, and we loan them out to departments or loan them out to project offices when they run into trouble. Other areas where we've done that is in the area of cybersecurity. I spoke at the CIO meeting yesterday about how we're leveraging our State Guard and their trained computer network defense system to go out and help departments do their own self-assessments in cybersecurity. And the latest one that we're in the process of standing up is the State Project Management Office, where we'll develop an office that provides project management services to state agencies, and hopefully develop it as a center of excellence where people can go and build a career in project management. The other thing that we've done there is to try and reduce the complexity of our infrastructure. So we're moving to cloud computing and trying to standardize on the technologies we use, trying to reduce the complexity so that when we do have turnover, there's less recovery time. And then finally, we're trying to mature our processes. So a good example of that is the way we've changed the way we approve technology initiatives. So before, we basically asked departments, develop a comprehensive assessment and report and proposal and throw it over the fence to us. And then, we'd approve it or not approve it, and then, 2 years later, they'd get into trouble on projects. So now what we're doing is we've broken it up into a staged approval process that walks them through a pretty comprehensive planning process. And so even if they don't necessarily have the discipline or the experience, the process is going to walk them through that process of trying to make sure that they achieve success on projects.
Good. So your idea on encouraging more people, attracting more people, is this idea that it's going to be a more professional, best practices type of organization that people can really grow in. Is that a fair way to put it?
I think it is. And the other thing that we've done, I didn't really talk about it, we try to go out to the private sector folks that have already had a career. By the way, anybody here that's interested, 88% turnover, a lot of leadership opportunities.
I wouldn't mind Arizona.
And so, so we try and recruit them to come over and do some public service after they're done with their careers. And we've had some success in that too.
Oh, good, thank you. Leslie, are you seeing anything that sort of piques your interest for, across state organizations for programs to attract young workers or attract veterans or other things you're seeing states put in place?
Sure. I think a good number of states are reaching out to universities and developing more relationship and internships, and even in high schools, going out to high schools and at least getting students to think about a career in public service, whether that's in IT or other fields as well. So those are some of the things that they're doing. Obviously, individualized recruiters for a particular agency or particular jobs, we're seeing more of that, absolutely. And the state of Louisiana is doing a great job in reaching out to veterans, really taking military jobs and matching them with state jobs, doing a very good job of that. Job preview videos online so people can see what they would do in a day is very interesting, particularly for those hard to recruit and retain positions.
Good, thank you. Tim, what about Missouri?
That's a great question. What about Missouri? So we've got kind of a holistic approach to workforce, and it could be summed up the way Missourians would sum it up, right? It'd be bring them in, train them up, let them leave, but help them stay. Okay, so we bring them in. We have programs to help bring in entry-level workers. We have a great internship program. We're going to have 30-plus interns this year. Young people can come in. They can get the feel of state government, get to know who we are. We can get to know them. It's really an opportunity for both of us. We've got relationships with colleges where we know that what they're doing, we can stay in contact with them. It helps them to know that they can trust us if they want to send their people our way. We go to job fairs, etc. Train them up. I make sure that every employee of ours has $250 for training every year. And that's just the money for training. They also have time. Everybody has 2 hours a week for personal development, training, whatever they need to do. I want to make sure that all of our people are growing no matter what job they've got. We just recently are in the process of creating what we call ITSDU, which is our leadership academy, essentially. We want people to have that opportunity to get into a mentoring program so that they can become our next generation of leaders, not just managers, but leaders. So it's really exciting that we're headed in that direction. Let them leave. So for me, it's a red flag when one of my managers, supervisors comes in and they're upset because one of their employees has resigned or retired or whatever it is. A huge red flag. Our managers and our supervisors should care about our employees. They should celebrate when someone has an opportunity to advance their career. So we hope it's not outside our organization, but sometimes the best opportunity they've got is outside our organization. We want our employees to know we care about them. So my most important employee I've got, the guy that I would hate to lose, he's in this room. His name's Mike Rowling. And you can ask vendors, this guy is brilliant. He's our Chief Information Security Officer. If he came in to me and said, hey, I'm going to go make 3 times as much somewhere else, that's it. Congratulations, Mike. That's awesome. You deserve it. All right, that's what I want him to feel like, that we've got that relationship. So our employees need to know that we're going to support them. We also want to make it hard for them to leave, help them stay, right? Make that decision to leave the hardest thing that they can make. Make them agonize over it. They're going to make twice as much money, but doggone it, they're going to leave all these relationships behind. They've been empowered at work. They're doing something they love. I hate to leave this place. Right? Help them stay. So that's really what we do in Missouri.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. And in Maine, I think we're doing several of the things that were mentioned here. We've revamped our intern program. Prior to revamping it, it was sort of a general intern program. You didn't even interview the interns, and they may or may not have had the applicable skill sets. So we took, in information technology, we took over that program. We've revamped it. We've raised the amount we can pay them. And we treat an intern like we're bringing an employee in. We have group interviews. We make sure they have the right skill set. We give them mentors when they come in, and we make sure they have meaningful work. And what's really surprised me is we've been doing this for about 2 years. Over 70% of our interns have gone on to become full-time employees with the state. And I had no idea the number would be that high, but if you reflect on it, we have interesting work. People sometimes as state employees, we don't realize how interesting what we do is. And this sort of dawned on me. My background's financial services and insurance. I built all those applications for my career, and so this is a new direction for me. And it sort of came home to roost that this was a different job. Early when I started, it was a Sunday afternoon. I was at a beach on a lake in Maine. We have beautiful lakes. They're full of water. You guys don't want. We can send you water.
Please do.
We have so much water. It's like all over the place. We don't know what to do with it.
All the empties, make sure you don't, if they're not empty, bring them to my table, okay? I'll take them with me.
So I got a call that Sunday afternoon from one of the network guys, and he said, Jim, we have a problem. There's a fire on Big Blue Mountain. And I'm thinking, okay, Wayne, why do I care? He said, well, he said, our radio equipment that we run for the state police is on the top of that mountain. And by the way, our helicopter caused the fire, and it will be in the paper tomorrow. And I said, okay,
I care.
this is a different job. And it really is a different job. So one of the things we're trying to do in Maine is really put that branding out there. We're trying to find ways to brand our jobs and say to students as they come in, or new-time workers, first-time workers as they come in, we're going to give you experiences you're not going to have anyplace else, whether it's in Department of Corrections or Health and Human Services or public safety, working with the state police. You're going to build applications and things that you won't have a chance to build anywhere else. Come to us for 3 or 4 years, get the experience. If you move on, like Tim says after that, if you move on, that's one thing, but maybe you'll come back. But we're going to get some of the best and brightest, and we're going to give you an opportunity you may not have someplace else. So it's exciting for us. And just on the attracting younger workers, we do something we've started called our Technology Night, where we bring in high school students. Between us and a couple private companies in Maine, we've had over 1,000 high school students have gone through these tech nights. We bring them in for 3 or 4 hours, and we show this is what our job is like. Because a lot of people, as they stop the technology courses in the high school and stuff, they don't know, these students don't know what we do for a living. They don't understand development. They don't understand mobile and infrastructure and the difference between operations and QA and these type of things. So we try to show them, and it's really been thrilling that people have come back to us, and high school parents have come back, parents of high school students have come back to us and said, our children had no idea these things were going on in Maine, and they're thinking about this for their college career. So it's our little way to give back and sort of seed that pump for things coming forward. So a lot of interesting things going on. Thank you. We have another ARS question for you. And this one apparently is for everyone and Stu. What skills / disciplines do you think present the greatest challenge in attracting and retaining state IT employees? And this is for everyone. Is it application development, programming, and support? Is it architecture, business intelligence, data analytics, big data, mainframe legacy support, security, or other? Well, probably not too many surprises there, because we've talked so much already at the conference on the challenge of finding and retaining security resources when they're needed by every company. So it's a challenge. So a couple more questions for our panel. Tim, if you don't mind, I'll start with you on this one. From Missouri, is the nature, skill set, attributes of younger workers different? If so, are there changes we need to make to understand that?
In my opinion, I think it's a little different. I think that younger workers are more willing to embrace change. They're more collaborative. They've got different skills. Not many of them come in telling us they want to be a COBOL programmer. That's one big difference. So as far as what do, we have to own that as an organization, in my opinion. We have to do the same thing. We have to embrace the change and know that they may, the young workers, they may just want to stay a year and do something else. They may want to stay 2 years and do something else. But we really need to make sure that we understand that, we embrace the change, and we're not trying to fit them into something they don't want to be fit into.
Thank you. Leslie, how about from a holistic perspective? Do we need to think of this younger generation, the new resources coming into the workforce differently?
I think so. I think exactly about wanting to be collaborative, wanting to work on different projects and fulfilling projects, and thinking about that, and whether that's allowing them to move from agency to agency and kind of trying to forget about the turf battles and those types of things, and just understanding that there's talent in the state as a whole is an important thing to think about as well as we move into that. But certainly, I don't think anybody expects these employees, younger employees, to stay in a particular job in a particular agency.
Right. Okay, thank you. Carlos?
So I think there's a couple of things that are really vital to do. One is to recognize some of the inherent strengths that they bring. What I've seen, especially with the younger generation, the millennials, they want to make a difference. They want to make an impact in the world. So I think one of the things we have to do is embrace that and leverage it, and then show them how you can do that in the public sector. And then give them a chance to actually do that. In my shop, we've had a couple of opportunities where folks pretty much volunteer to go do stuff. You know, they want to have an impact. And you know, we've been lucky enough to have executives that recognize it and say, okay, you want to do something? Come on over. We're going to put you on a really important project. And they love it and they thrive in that. So I think that's one thing. Secondly, one of the things that we're doing in California, which I think it's not particular to IT, but I think it's long overdue, is we're revamping our whole civil service process. It's led out of our HR department. And so the way that we hire, the way that we advertise, you know, they did a survey of how many civil service classifications we had, and they were in the thousands. So we're thinking, do you really need all that complexity and all the, you know, arcane, you know, job descriptions and the process where you have to submit an application and it's got to be rated, and then you got to come back in and you got to be in these ranks. And so, so I think updating our hiring practices will help bring these folks in and allow for some of that flexibility of folks coming in, moving around if need be, and to give them an opportunity to see government as a potential employment opportunity.
You know, I think that's a very important point. And when I started a couple of years ago, I was looking at our hiring process, and I looked at our online application, which really wasn't an online application because you had to print it off and then mail it back in. And you know what it had on the first page of every application, no matter what job you were hiring for, had a little fill in the blank, and you know what it was? WPM. Anybody know what that is? Words per minute.
Oh, typing.
And I'm thinking, how will we ever attract this younger workforce who's, A, not looking on the state website for jobs in the first place, and then 2, sees a job, an application, 12-page application that you've got to print off, fill out, and mail back in, and figure out what WPM means. So it's really a challenge, and I say we'll never find the younger people if we're not out there with social media and other ways to find people. But to take off on Tim's comment, we really think that the idea of the younger workforce coming in is probably a game changer, and sort of what you said, people may not stay their whole careers. They may stay for 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, and so that in turn makes us think about how do you onboard people quickly, and how do you get them effective quickly, and so it changes the dynamics a little bit. And the other thing, Carlos, to take off on one of the things you said on, you know, how do you give them interesting work? We've created for our interns, we've created something we call the Intern Challenge, so we put a couple of teams of interns together, and give them a problem outside of their normal workday, right? Outside of the work they're doing for the applications or the other areas. For one of ours, it was creating a social media presence for our application tracking and processing. And what we do, we give them a mentor and say, go out and show us your critical thinking skills. You know, we don't say it that way, but that's really what you're doing. Go do the research, develop solutions, and come and make a presentation to us. And what we've done is, they've made the presentation to me, now they're making it to the commissioners of the agencies, are giving this opportunity. And my final thought is to have them present to the governor, because A, they'll be able to see, you know, the governor will be able to understand what talent there is in the new generation coming up, and they'll be able to go back to the universities and say, I got to present to the governor. Now, you can do that, you know, in smaller states like Maine and stuff. It's not as easy in other states, but this idea of giving them meaningful work and letting them move forward on that.
And if I could,
Yes.
even if it's not the governor, but exposing them to senior leaders is something that, you know, when I came up in the civil service ranks, and I didn't get to do that until I was, you know, years and years into my career. But giving them that opportunity, one, helps them to see, hey, this is kind of exciting, and I can really make a big impact, and they get to see how senior leaders think, too.
Next question for the panel. Carlos, maybe we'll start on this side. So we understand the gap, we understand the retirement, all understand the need to find more resources. So how do you find, identify, and hire strong candidates? Do you do things like attribute testing? Have you outlined attributes of a strong employee? What are those attributes? So you're saying, I want to hire this next generation of superstars. How do I find and identify them?
I think you have to start with first understanding the needs of the positions or the jobs that you're trying to fill. And so I think by doing that, you get to define what do you really need. So one of the things that I found interesting in that ARS question about, you know, where do we think the skill gaps are going to be on the issue, one of the items was on analytics, data analytics, but it was talking about the IT workforce. I actually see that as more of a need on the business side of the house, on the program side of the house. So if I'm thinking of somebody to come in and do analytics, I want them to be able to think, you know, from a business perspective. I want them to be able to think, okay, how does technology or anything that we use in technology impact the ability of government to deliver service? And how could we make it better? So I think it goes back to understanding what are the critical needs of the particular job function, and that helps you to determine the attributes that you're gonna be looking for.
Good. Leslie, same sort of question for you. How do you, A, where are they? How do we find them? And B, how do you identify them? How are you going to hire those future leaders for state government?
Sure, and I think that's a great question in many ways, and I think that states are still struggling with that, to be honest with you. But you know, a few years ago, nobody would have ever talked about state government recruiting at all. I mean, you didn't recruit because, well, it violated every civil service rule and many other things. So you have to think about it that way. But I think, you know, states are developing relationships. The recruiters are developing relationships with universities and businesses, and they're out on social media a little bit more, getting a little bit more exposure. I also think states are realizing they're going to have to grow their own and really putting more time into developing talent and offering training to employees and maybe taking them from another agency. Maybe they hadn't thought about a particular career in a certain area, but knowing that they had some talent and ability and really looking at that.
Tim?
So the first thing that I think people need to know is that there's a lot of people that work for you that aren't very good at hiring. Okay? Don't let them hire people.
Okay, that's it, folks. We're done.
Okay, so we tried to fix that problem, and I would not put myself on the hiring committee, so that was a good thing that I did. But I did put a bunch of people on the hiring committee, we call them the interview panel for application development, that know how to hire, and they know how to identify people that are going to fit in with our culture. That's the most important thing that the interview panel has to do, is they have to identify the people that are going to fit and contribute to our culture as they move forward. We want to make sure they have aptitude, but the attitude is the most important thing. Do they have emotional intelligence? Are they collaborative? Are they willing to embrace and seek out change for the better? So those kinds of things. That's what we really focus on. That the interview panels have made a big difference. If you can just have a little bit of bump in the number of percentage of successful hires, you're going to fix a lot of problems.
I think that's very true, Tim, and I think it ties back to some of the discussion of the keynote this morning, talking about the difference between the head and the heart. Yeah, people have to have the skill sets, but you're talking about what's the attitude they bring, what are the attributes they bring. They're going to make this employee a successful employee.
You know, I think that also applies to the leadership team. One of the things that I really try to emphasize with my folks is get out there and be visible. That's when people approach you. You know, that's when people, you know, whenever we have a conference, I always make a sales pitch for, hey, come and work for the state, or come to work for our department. You know, we're looking for good people. And surprisingly, a lot of people actually come in and you know, approach you and say, hey, I'd love to come and work. And so I think as leaders or our IT managers, one of the things that they can do is to get out and about in the community and let folks know, here's what we're doing, here's what we're looking for. And you'll get approached. You know, people will self-identify.
What about the idea on this hunting for the new employees? What about the idea of partnerships within your state? In Maine, we have a partnership with the private industry and the universities. We're calling it Project Login, and it's several companies in Maine, and there aren't too many Fortune 500 companies in Maine. It's only a handful, so it's easy to do. But one of them's a water company. If you need, I'll give them the telephone number. So, I'm sure we can work this out before the end of the day. So these companies got together and they said, we have a problem. They saw the silver tsunami coming, but they also saw that the number of students entering IT, computer science, was dropping, and not just, it was easy to see that the numbers coming out of the colleges and universities weren't going to fulfill what our gaps were, even in Maine. So several companies got together, created what we call the Project Login, working with the universities and working with the high schools and saying, how do we tell students the story? How do we attract students? How do we get companies to work together? And again, it's a small state, but there's these 4 or 5 companies in the state. We started to collectively advertise internships for IT, and we have 100, 150, 180 internships. People can go to one spot, one website, and say, I'm interested in IT. How do I learn more about it? We have programs that reach out into the high schools and the grammar schools. So that type of partnership. And I was wondering, maybe we'll start with Tim, talk about partnerships that you might have with universities, colleges, even private business. And one of the things that surprised me, that people are so, the companies in Maine are not really in competition with each other. They're in different industries. We're even to the point where we're talking about sharing interns. In other words, an intern might work for me for a year and then go work for IDEX for a year, or LL Bean, or one of those other companies, and really saying, we have a shared issue here, so let's work together to solve it. Tim, anything on that with the colleges, universities, other people helping you with this issue?
We do. We've got a nice situation. We're in the middle of Missouri, and the University of Missouri is close to us, about 30 minutes north, but we have other colleges that are in Jefferson City that really like to send us people. And one of them is a tech college, 4-year tech college, called Lynn State, and another one called Lincoln University. And so we have relationships with them. We routinely get their applicants. It works out great for us because they want to stay in a small town. They like Jefferson City. They're interested in tech, and we've got it. So it's a great partnership.
Good, thank you. Leslie, thoughts on that?
Sure, I think a lot of states are looking at that, particularly it's just a workforce development in general need across the state, so they are partnering with other organizations, and I think that's an important point for people don't think about sometimes, is the state is the largest employer or one of the largest employers in the state, and so you've got to be ahead of things in workforce development and partner. There's value for the state.
Carlos?
So we've had a couple of interesting partnerships. There's probably 3 or 4 universities in most of the state jobs are in Sacramento, especially in IT. 3 or 4 universities in the area that we partnered with in terms of developing leadership academies or training programs to help train the state workforce. But what it does is it also leads to some of those universities developing program disciplines. So one of our University of California campuses right outside of Sacramento developed a cybersecurity program. Right, so we're looking at that as potentially a place where we can go and recruit folks. What we've also done is the state has had a long-term relationship with the universities where we hire student interns to come in, work for the state while they're going to school, and that's actually how I started in state government. A lot of those folks turn into permanent state employees. We also have a partnership with the private sector. We essentially develop and train folks, and then they come and pick them off. So, so that happens a lot.
But that might be the new reality, right?
It really
so you
is.
have to onboard people quickly?
So
get
we're
them
looking at
effective
ways
quickly?
of getting back at them,
Yeah.
going out and recruiting from the private sector.
Okay, just remember what
Although,
said
you know,
here stays here.
I do want to say something. What we have seen is there are a number of organizations that put on, I guess, training conferences for the IT industry, the private sector, where they've seen some of our training academies, and they're starting to model and emulate those. So the cool part about that is they reached out to some of us at the state level who've organized that to help plan and you know, sit on their boards and participate in those. And so for us, that's a really good opportunity to go and you know, try and pick off some people from the private sector, not necessarily from the tech sector, but you know, folks that work in the tech part of different companies, and try and entice them into coming into state government.
We found that one of the interesting aspects of the Silver Tsunami is it has brought about more conversations with the universities and private industries, and some challenges, frankly, on both sides. One of the conversations we have with the universities quite frequently is this idea of the computer science degree, and what does someone need to have a computer science degree? You know, they'll talk about multiple levels of calculus, and then you go to recruiters and HR people and say, well, does that ever come up in an interview? And they'll say, well, no, of course not. And so you say, are we eliminating portions of this, of the group of young students coming up? Are we sort of scaring them away because we're saying, well, if you don't have this level of math or this level of background, you can't get these jobs, when in fact that may not be what people do day to day. And that sort of leads me into my next question, and I'll start with Carlos on this. Are the way you're recruiting, it's the way you're recruiting people, aside from social media and things like that, changed? In other words, are you looking for people with a 4-year degree, or are you changing it to a 2-year degree, or is it work experience? Especially understanding that just as the baby boomer challenge is hitting us, it's also hitting private companies, so everybody's looking for these employees at the same time.
So the short answer to that is we're trying to change it, but in many cases we're restricted by the civil service classifications and the minimum qualifications that were established, you know, 50 years ago, before there was technology. So we're trying to modify that. We have gone out and tried to reach out to the technical schools in the area. There's a few of those where, you know, you don't go in and get a 4-year degree, but you go in and get, you know, training or a certificate in a specific technical field. But really for us, it comes down to modernizing and changing our civil service system so that we can go out and say, you know, you really don't need a 4-year degree to come in and do application development or to, you know, some aspect of technology.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal. Leslie, comments on that?
I would just add to what you're saying is states are really looking at their classifications and trying to pare those down for the most part, and really looking at KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, rather than a degree or those types of things. And so I think that's one of the, and just, you know, trying to ease the hiring process a little bit, make it easier, make it more accessible, make it, and speed up the hiring process too. And as we talked about, that's sometimes difficult, but those are some of the things states are doing.
Tim, is the nature of who you're hiring evolving?
It's so outdated now, the whole qualifications for hiring an IT person. With the consumerization of technology, you may be a psychology degree holder, right? So you went to school, studied no IT, but you may have set up your own server in your dorm room, running your own website, and creating your own mobile apps. But according to personnel regulations, that doesn't count. But yet they're light years ahead of anybody with 15 hours of just IT courses. So hopefully we'll be able to make some inroads there going forward.
And what about the process itself? When I look at the state of Maine, I look at the job descriptions we post, I say, wow, I wouldn't want that job. I mean, they're just so boring, and just so, and you know, it's this disconnect between the reality of what the job is and the description. There's no sort of correlation there to say, who would ever take that job? Do you have that type of issue too, where there's just that disconnect?
We have the classification descriptions, which are extremely boring.
Yeah.
But then it's the job of our interview panel to make the job descriptions exciting. So the job description matches to a classification, but we don't talk about that much.
But is that, by the time you get to the interview panel, is that too late? In other words, are some people looking at those advertisements or looking on your state website and saying, I don't think I'm going to go work for Google or somebody else. I'm not going to work for that because it doesn't sound like an interesting job.
That's our when we post a job description, we want to make sure that it's enticing.
Yeah.
And our panel does a good job with that. So hopefully we've got enough fish in the net through that we're going to be okay.
You know-
Leslie? Oh, go ahead, Carlos.
I was going to say, in our case, it's not even just a job description. Sometimes the job titles, there's civil service boring classifications
Yeah.
that don't match anything.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, if I'm trying to hire a project manager, the classification is data processing manager. You know, or in cybersecurity, it's data processing. You know, somebody who's looking, they're going to say, I'm not doing data
Yeah,
processing.
right.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
apply for that.
Yeah.
You have to entice them to even read the job description.
Yeah, exactly. Leslie?
Well, I think you're exactly right, and you know, these are just great examples of the need for civil service reform in a number of cases and flexibilities, and we could talk about that all day, I'm sure. But you know, so trying to make the jobs interesting, and I think you're right. You know, you've got a great idea of developing the job descriptions and having that flexibility to do so. Some states, unfortunately, do not. So.
I mean, is there a way to work, if we look at the younger generation coming in and we know one of the attributes is they want to make a difference and they want to give back, is there a way to work that into job descriptions and saying this is meaningful work? Do you think?
Right, yeah, I absolutely think so. You've got to make the job attractive.
Okay. We have a couple minutes left here, so look for some closing thoughts here from our panel. I have two-part question on this. What do you think, what has been the most successful program approach in this area for your state? And if you had a magic wand or even a magic tablet, what would you do to help your recruiting? Carlos?
I think what's been most successful in my state has been just placing an emphasis on developing the staff that we have, developing the workforce. So we created an office called the Office of Professional Development to go out, partner with the universities, partner with the private sector, the tech sector in particular, and say, let's develop the staff that we have and shortcut their learning curve. What that's done, it's created a level of energy, a level of buzz, and people are getting to see, one, connect with each other across agencies, and getting to see that there's some exciting stuff going on in government. So I think for us, that's probably been the most successful so far. If I had a magic wand, what I would do is change the civil service system to make it easier to hire and retain people and recruit them, you know, with today's, you know, reality of how technology works.
Yeah, it
and
really
how-
is a challenge
how
because we're
people find
talking about how
jobs.
fast the industry changes, yet we're hampered by a process that was developed many, many years ago and is not agile. You can't change
It's
that
not.
process quickly. Leslie, what are you doing with your magic tablet?
I-
Scrabble?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's given up. No, I think you're right. Civil service reform and flexibility and agility within that system, and also I don't think you can have that conversation without talking about the compensation we've seen in the survey. And I understand budgets are what they are, but having the ability to reward top performers at the very minimum in all the states is something you've got to think about.
Tim?
So as far as addressing the workforce crisis challenge, our two most successful strategies have been the consolidation because we didn't need to hire over 250 employees that we would have had to. So we've gone from 1,200 down to 950, right around there. And the other one, the interview panels, I can't stress enough how big a gain just a little bit of uptick in your success rate at hiring can make for your organization. It's been very significant for us. And if I had a magic wand, I would make sure that everybody in my organization did what our keynote speaker said to do this morning, to live that out and to create the culture where everybody's excited to come to work, they're engaged, and they just don't want to leave no matter how much somebody offers them to leave.
Thank you. What about just, I think I have 2 minutes left here. We'll put Carlos on the spot here, just for our last 2 seconds, because you talked about sort of what I talked about. I got 25% leaving. Yours is even higher, I think, over the next couple of years. What happens if you don't solve this? What if you can't find the resources to come in? What's your contingency plan?
We're going to outsource
Mine's
to
retirement,
Arizona.
but
Yeah, we're going to outsource to Arizona.
they
No,
don't have any water either, you
yeah.
know.
If we don't solve it, we're in serious problems because, I say this at every speech I give back home. Government relies and work, thrives on technology. If we're not able to support our systems or provide the technology that departments need, you might as well shut down government.
Yeah.
So there is no option. We have to find a way to solve it.
Do you think there's a tipping point, and sort of to Leslie's point about the salary, do you think there's a tipping point where legislative bodies are going to say, whoa, we've got an issue now, we've got to deal with this
You know,
somehow?
I had a really interesting experience. I was at a legislative hearing where the legislature was saying, we got to find a way to pay your people more.
Yeah.
And I
I've
was
had the
saying,
same
don't say that too
experience,
loud. I have people listening
Yeah.
in on this. But yeah, I think compensation is one of the issues. I don't think, in honesty, I don't think it's the biggest issue, but it is one. I think if we just had more agility and being able to bring people in and in reality to get rid of people that are just non-performers,
Yeah.
I think that by itself would go a long ways.
I agree, and I think one of the things we're trying to do in Maine is really bring in some new technology. You know, what are the things that are really going to move us forward, and give people an opportunity to learn and use those things. And you know, it isn't the job you had in 1980. We're not COBOL programmers, right? We're doing agile, we're doing business process management. There are other ways to develop systems and processes. There are other ways to partner with your agencies and make things happen and move things forward. And I think it's an exciting time for state workers. I really do, state IT workers. And I think it's a matter of getting that message out there. So closing comments with 1 minute left, Tim? We want to go back to keynote speaker, right? There were good information there.
Fantastic, yeah. So I think that the number one reason that people quit is they quit their boss. And that's why I feel so strongly about culture.
Got a couple of guys who work for me out there. They're still there. So that's good. Leslie, how do we solve this? What are we going to do? How do we get them excited?
Well, I think one of the ways that we can do that is groups like NASCIO, and I really applaud you and Stu as your president's initiative to bring this issue again to the forefront. You guys do a great job of that, and working with the HR folks, and there are other associations, state government associations, the public health officials do a great job of advocating for their workforce as well. And we've all got to come together and have the same message, and again, instead of just the IT folks fighting for their employees, as a state government as a whole, and really look at the entire system. And I think that would be important.
Thank you. Carlos, the last soundbite?
You know, I think the best thing that we could do, given all the challenges that we have, is to let folks know, whether it's folks that we're trying to recruit or folks that we're trying to retain, just how important the work that we do in technology is and what an impact it has on people's lives, especially in the public sector. I think that in and of itself would go a long ways towards encouraging people to stay and encouraging other folks to consider public service as a career option.
I think those are great words from all of our panelists. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists. I'd like to remind people to pick up the survey. There's some valuable information there, and I think, you know, we all have to sort of brainstorm about this and think about this together, because this storm is coming, right? Whether it's the Titanic or the perfect storm or whatever we call it, this is coming, so we have to deal with this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good to...
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want us to collect some water bottles?
Yeah, collect all the ones that aren't.
All the water bottle. Oh wait, here, Carlos. Here's another one. Carlos. So thank you, Jim, Tim, Leslie, and Carlos, and everybody who worked on this. It's a great document, and it'll be out on a table right outside of this the room here. So make sure you pick up a copy and look through it. You can see that we still talk about these issues, but it's not just talk. You're looking at least the 3 states up there that are trying to do something about it. There's several other states, Tennessee, others. I mean, we're all trying to put those, talent management offices in place and whatever you want to call them to try to crack this nut. So there's a lot of innovation going on in the other states. Make sure that if you're thinking about it in your state, that you're talking to the other states to see what they're up to and how they're doing it as well. So appreciate you guys coming up and doing that. So lunch is going to be served in this room in just a few minutes. While I got a couple of seconds, I want to remind you guys about the discovery sessions, and they'll be held directly after here, or after this meeting, after lunch. And there are 3 topics to choose from. The titles and descriptions are available in the program, and please participate in that. And then we'll be back in here for the afternoon networking session roundtables at about 3 p.m. I'll remind you again about the donation, and if you can get out to the booth there, and if you can also plan on being around at 4:15 to help us pack the backpacks, that would be great. It's time for lunch. Thanks, everybody.